Welcome back to the 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show. My name is Wayne Kimmel, managing partner of 76 Capital, the sports tech venture capital company. On this show, I interview top sports entrepreneurs, athletes, and executives who are shaping and many times changing the sports business industry. You can subscribe to our show on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our 76 Capital website.
Okay.
Today, my guest on our 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show is the co-founder and president of Make Plays Media, Scott Braun. Scott is also the host of Foul Territory and the executive producer of the show. Foul Territory is a digital broadcasting baseball show that's hosted by former All-Stars A.J. Pierzynski, Todd Frazier, Adam Jones, Lorenzo Cain, Brock Holt, Jason Kipnis, and Erik Kratz. The show streams live Monday through Friday and features authentic takes on the spiciest baseball topics, unfiltered conversations with the top voices in the sport, and groundbreaking betting coverage. Scott was also previously a studio host and reporter for MLB Network, NHL Network, and more. And you know, we're also really excited that Scott was also a camper back in the day at play-by-play sports broadcasting camps. Scott, welcome to our 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show.
Wayne, great to talk to you, and thank you for taking me back to my broadcasting roots, my teenage days at the sports play-by-play camps, which I think back then were called Scholastic. These were the very early days of the camp, so I liked the flashback. That's like 20 plus years ago for me, but great to talk to you.
Great to talk to you. I know the guys, Steven and Jeremy, regard you as one of their top alums and are so proud of everything that you've done across the industry.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, let's jump right into this. I mean, I think what's interesting is we were originally connected through one of your partners, Bet MGM, and Katie Kohler, and really appreciate her for setting this up. And I'd love for you to jump in and talk about that. Such an innovative partnership that you have with MGM and what you're doing with Foul Territory in them.
We've been working with Bet MGM since we launched. I've always been very involved into the betting space and how it ties into baseball, and also how we can create organic conversations around the betting space that includes many bettors looking for information and tips and insight and to have fun within our community, but also includes people that might not be everyday bettors on baseball, but enjoy the conversation in terms of an over-under win projection for a team heading into the 2025 season, which is what we're covering right now on our show. And Wayne, they've been awesome partners. I love the relationship and how it's evolved, and we don't have many rules with a company like ours. We're independent. So when you create deliverables with the brand partner, the fact that you're able to then grow on those, and for example, have a all MLB player poker tournament that's live streamed almost like a World Series of Poker event. Those are the kind of things that you don't expect going into a partnership, but that you build together. So it's been super fun. We do events with them on the road at ballparks, at casinos, and so much more. So thanks for shouting it out. They've been great partners for us.
That's amazing. Where are some of the places that you've been with them, and some of these different events that you've done so people can find you and come and meet you?
So we were just in Atlantic City. We do many stops at Borgata on a yearly basis at their sports book, and then around their poker events, which is a booming industry for them, especially the online world, and some of the mergers that we're seeing right now where players in New Jersey can now finally play online against players in Michigan. I'm a big poker guy and a big poker fan, so it's been a cool little extra addition to the partnership. But also Vegas, of course, for shows in their studios out there at Mandalay Bay. We're on the road at some of their sports books that are tied to ballparks. I would say one of the crown jewels is actually in Cincinnati at the Banks, because it is maybe 10 steps from the ballpark. So you walk out of the book and then you can go to the game, or vice versa. If you go to a game and then want to watch some football or March Madness coming up, I think we're going to be there around March Madness because that ties into opening day. So those are some of the stops, and many more that we do on a yearly basis with them. I think we'll go to DC, Detroit, and some other places where we'll do a ballpark stop, a casino, or a sports book stop, and more.
You play a really interesting role in the overall media landscape across all sports. I mean, I'd love to hear what you and your co-founder at Make Plays Media are really thinking about from a media perspective, and what you're building there.
So Wayne, I felt like I was underserved as a baseball junkie, a sports fan that was looking for content on podcasts, that was looking for content on digital, and still even looking for content on linear TV that just felt more authentic. And I just couldn't find it anywhere. Of course, I was working in the industry. I was working for a network slash league that just operates differently. It's more about the games and the stats. I like that, but I'm also into the storylines, the spice, juice, controversy, whatever you want to call it, because to me, that's what makes a random game on June 10th more interesting, where there's a little something to it. And sports to me is like one big reality show when you're covering it like that on a daily basis. So that's where Foul Territory was formed, and really the production company behind it, Make Plays Media. I felt like we weren't getting the most prominent voices in baseball commenting on the game on a regular basis. Felt like our sport was falling behind many other sports or pro sports leagues. So NFL, of course, NBA, NCAA football, I would call a pro sports league at this point. I felt like the content there was flying past what the offerings were for people like me, right? Mid 30s, watches games every night, bets on games, but also wants to be on the go listening to updates on what's going on a daily basis with a little less stats and a little more storylines tied to it. I wanted more authentic interviews with players, and we were seeing that from especially NBA and NFL media companies and podcasts that popped up on an almost monthly basis, right? You can, of course, bring up the big names like McAfee and Shannon Sharp, but even many other kind of secondary names in those sports were putting together really cool content. And I'm like, where the hell is it for baseball? I could not find it. It did not exist. It's a little more complicated with our sport for a variety of reasons, including scheduling during the season. Players play every day. But the real fact of the matter is you can still get them to open up and give you really cool answers. And MLB has just as much drama and insight as the NFL and NBA does. But you just have to be, I think, more cautious with their time during the season. So instead of a 1 hour plus podcast interview, can we get them on more of a TV show format, but it's going to be more of a podcast style conversation for 15 minutes instead of an hour plus on a game day. We've been able to create that. We've had, I think, over 600 player guest appearances in our first 2 years. We're just shy of 2 years in our public launch for Foul Territory. We've created a number of other shows around us, currently at 12, soon to be 15 total shows. There's a prospect show in our partnership with Baseball America, Insider Show with our senior insider, Ken Rosenthal, who makes appearances on Foul Territory, also has his own show, and then a number of team shows in about half the markets now in baseball that just tie to the core of our motto, which is baseball the way it should be covered, which I felt like wasn't happening in our sport. So we often are pairing top insiders in our team shows with former players. Like, for example, Crush City Territory just launched an Astros show that has the top beat writer insider in the Houston area. His name's Chandler Rome. He writes for The Athletic. He's got a co-host with him, Tyler Stafford, and who kind of directs the traffic. And then Josh Reddick joined the team as well, former Astros player who's beloved in Houston. So anyway, we're creating that playbook on a number of levels. You have to do it regionally and nationally in baseball because it is a hyper-regionalized sport. As you know, in the Philly area, they care about the Phillies, maybe the Mets and the Braves and a few other teams like the Nats, not much else. So we make sure we serve everyone however they are as a baseball fan.
And who is your co-founder in this, and how did you guys come together?
So my co-founder's name is Mark Weiner, and he's a executive producer, production superstar. He planned and ran events for MLB in the past, like the MLB Draft, the MLB Combine, and took those from events to TV, digital, social events as well. Him and I had been talking about ideas like this for a long time. We were shocked when we never saw anything emerge in our specific sport. We decided to take the leap and both leave and launch this and put a lot together behind the scenes before that all happened. But we've hired a really cool staff of producers, directors, editors, social media managers, and then a talent base now that's probably in the 30 plus range between all of our team shows, and Foul Territory alone has about 10 to 12 different hosts that are involved with the show. So him and I complement each other well. He knows how to, for example, set up a live event and make it stream on television and on digital and social in 5 seconds. I'm more of the revenue generator, sales guy, partnership deals, which you can probably tell maybe from how I talk. But yeah, it's been an awesome relationship. Him and I have been good friends for probably close to 20 years at this point as well, almost as long as we go back to when I was at the camps, at the broadcasting camps. And yeah, one other thing to point out is that we're not just on YouTube and streaming on Twitter and some of these other obviously podcast platforms like Apple and Spotify after the show runs live. We actually have distribution on television with all of the FanDuel Sports regional networks. So there are 16 total plus Marquee, which has the Chicago Cubs. But when you add all of those networks together, they're home to 30 plus NBA, MLB, and NHL teams. We're on all of those networks every single day, live from 1 to 3 Eastern, and they run reruns quite frequently. So I'm walking around in Orlando, Florida, where I live, and it's the same channel as the Magic, the Heat, etc. So I get to see us all the time on TV, which is super cool. But just tying that to, my business partner, Mark, he's the one who is able to make television remotely. Our director is in Virginia, our producer's in Miami. I'm in Orlando with A.J. Pierzynski. We have other hosts in other locations. It's incredible because we did all that at MLB Network in Secaucus with multi-million dollar operations and studios and tons of people involved. And we've been able to create something that is really popular in the sport as a talk show without anybody being in the same place.
It's really incredible. I mean, what's now possible with remote studios, just using a computer, being able to then broadcast, and it's amazing what's happened, how fast that's all come together. I mean, I'd love to hear from you, like your journey. Once I believe you went to the University of Miami. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, I was reading that earlier, and my wife was so excited because she's, she always says, "I went to University of Maryland." She's like, "The real UM." I'm like, I know. I always hear about it all the time. And our poor son, he's there now, so he gets it now. But it's like, she loves the U, and love to hear your story. I mean, as you said, you went to the sports broadcasting camps. Was it something that you, as a kid, wanted to be a broadcaster and be in media? Like, how did it all come about?
So the quick story is you're a sports fanatic, just like many other kids your age. I'm playing every sport. Basketball was where I excelled the most. I was just always thinking about what my life was going to look like as an adult. That just was me. What's your career? What are you doing every day? Right? Because you see what your parents do. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to be an NBA player. Of course, I'm pretty good, right? I'm doing well in my travel ball league, AAU, all of that. And then as you get only a little bit older, the storyline stops at about 10, and I'm in an 11U tournament and I'm getting dunked on. And I'm like, okay, age 10, getting dunked on. I don't think I'm close to dunking back. So it was a nice ride through varsity basketball in high school, but that was it. But starting at age 10, I said, okay, what's my backup plan? Because I was telling everyone I was going to be in the NBA, like, whoever was my favorite player back then. I mean, because I think it was a little before Kobe, but eventually Kobe was my favorite. So I immediately set my eyes on the broadcast table because I'm like, they've got the best seat in the house. I'd often go to games with my dad. We're not sitting that close, especially when I was a kid. And I'm like, how do I get there? What are they doing? You're listening to them on TV. And I'm not just watching for the entertainment experience. I was watching and listening for the future job experience. I feel like that was a difference, right? You watch a game with your friends, you're just watching and having fun. I'm like, how are they going in and out of commercial break? How are they teeing up their broadcast partner? And this was starting around age 10, for real. Practicing at home in front of a TV, for the most part with video games. I know there were people older than me that used to say I would turn the volume down on TV and practice. I was like, well, I would leave the volume on lightly so I could hear, Madden, NBA Live, however they were broadcasting it. And then I would just talk over it and create scenarios where, okay, there's 2 minutes left. How am I going to broadcast the rest of this game on a video game? So that's how I trained myself. Next step, how can I be amongst other people like me? And that was where the camps got involved, right? So the Scholastic at the time play-by-play camps that 76 Capital obviously is a part investor of, as far as I know. So I found out about them, probably online is my guess, maybe even in a newspaper back then, and attended a few, ended up helping out as a counselor at a few as well, have spoken at many since then over the years when I'm in town and line up at the same time there. And I love being able to talk to the kids about this very story. So keep fast forwarding. And in high school, I picked up some jobs that were a little out of the norm. That was always my hook too. Okay, everyone wants to do this. I go to visit colleges and everybody's doing training with, calling games on radio. And if they have a great TV setup with their campus TV, cool. I'm going to do all that because I'm going to get the, 10,000 hours plus that you need to try and be an expert, or at least as good as you can be. But how am I going to stand out? So I was an on-field host for the Somerset Patriots, which is now the AA team for the Yankees. I grew up around that area. I tried out, I auditioned, I found that in the newspaper. So I was able to pick up that job. I was shadowing, then interning, then even doing a little bit of work that I wasn't supposed to with News 12 New Jersey in the area. They would send me out with a cameraman as long as my face wasn't on. Bosses didn't know. I would do interviews. So this was in high school, right? It was school, basketball, and then go work for News 12 at night. And the security guard sometimes at 1 or 2 in the morning is like, "Who are you?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm just like the nephew of one of the people that works here." And that ended eventually when they found out, but I had a good little run there. I was just able to create ways to be valuable, and stay behind the scenes a little bit, but have an edge. That continued on to University of Miami, did everything I could do within the school itself, but also utilized the area and the market. They've got pro teams, they've got Super Bowls, NASCAR championships, all of that. And I was able to find real work. CBSSports.com has an awesome hub that I think still exists down in the Fort Lauderdale area. I ended up working for them freelance and then pretty regularly, and picked up a number of other freelance job opportunities outside of school that ended up turning into almost a full-time job by my senior year. Had to get an agent. I had no idea how to negotiate anything for myself. So I grew up quickly. I did not act like a normal college student at times because I had a job. And then that job continued once I graduated until MLB Network, a baby at the time, maybe a year or two old, reached out to my agency and said, "Hey, we're looking for someone that's versatile, that can call games, that can host shows, that's maybe a little bit more digital, social focused." And that was me. I had a good audition run and ended up there for almost 12 years, and then
Wow.
was really into some of the new media work that they were doing, which leads me to where I am now. I'll just give you one other example where we had our MLB Network showcase games, but then there was also a new package that Facebook was developing with MLB, and it was an exclusive package. Our package for MLB Network wasn't exclusive. And also, Facebook sounded cooler to me than linear television. And this was about 10 years ago at the time. And
I
I'm raising
remember
my,
this.
you
Yeah, I
remember those
remember this.
games?
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
sometimes, Wayne, sometimes people try and say, "Oh, we were the first ones to put a game on, this social network or this streaming platform." I'm like, actually, MLB was first for exclusive games on Facebook. And some people were pissed, and rightfully so. They didn't know how to get there. They didn't even know how to sign up for an account. So we did that. That package eventually really turned into a YouTube package that was awesome. And I was the lead game caller for that as well. So anyway, that's what made me super excited. I would do those games as traditional as I could, but wanted to incorporate some of the new ideas that I thought that fans would like, which also meant monitoring comments and questions during the game itself on a much more rapid fire basis than just looking at a tweet while you're calling a baseball game. So we were able to do all that stuff. It was super cool. And then I just said, I need more of this, and I'm not finding this in our sport. So that's where we launched our company.
It's really amazing. I mean, I tell people all the time how innovative and how interested Major League Baseball is with new tech, digital, just anything that's new and interesting. Like it's so welcoming, as a league, and they're like, "Are you sure you're talking about baseball?" I'm like, no, seriously. Like, you have to understand. And you think about all the changes in the game and things that are happening and what's coming up. I mean, what are some of the things that you think are sort of next for baseball? Because there's this, I mean, my God, the controversy the commissioner mentions about what was it, the
Hold
golden.
that bat.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was a good topic for a week or so. Hey, props to Commissioner Manfred for letting us dominate the national headlines during a week when MLB had no business doing it. Think
right,
about it, right? I don't that was maybe what, early December range.
right.
MLB has no business being the top headline on CBS, ESPN, etc. And they were for just that one liner, which was actually an old line. It was from a few months back, and Jason Stark of the Athletic, who's been a guest on Foul Territory, just wrote about it, and then it took off, which is a perfect topic for our show. So to answer your question, I was very vocal back in my MLB Network days about how we needed a pitch clock, partially because I had seen it. It was being tested in the Arizona Fall League, again, probably 10 years ago. And I'm like, why is this taking so long to happen? There was a lot of drama behind the scenes to get to that point, and also a lot of data analysis and making sure that it was actually going to be okay and work. I would have been much more progressive and gotten it done quicker if it was up to me, because I felt like we were losing a generation of sports fans with the dead time in our sport, which is about 30 to 40 minutes that we were able to shave off where nothing was happening. We weren't missing a thing. We were actually getting ourselves back to 70s, 80s, 90s baseball. So I was big on that. Even before that, I was big on the unlimited timeouts having to go away because people were taking advantage of that, and it wasn't happening in the past, right? When you grow up, did you see, you know, Mike Piazza, right? I grew up in Mets and Yankees land. Jorge Posada calling timeout every batter to have a chat with his pitcher? No. But then
Right.
fast forward, and we have, I'll just throw out names of vets that Yadi Molina, Brian McCann, etc. Like, we're in the playoffs, and every at bat they're calling timeout and going to have a tea party with their pitcher. And half the time I talk to the pitchers, they didn't even want to have the chat. They're just like, this is just the way of the norm of the game now. They're worried about sign stealing, whatever. So we got rid of that. There's limits on timeouts. There's a pitch clock. I think it's pretty obvious what's next. We have a problem with calling balls and strikes. Ultimately, we might have a full-fledged robo-ump ABS, as they call it, system, automated balls and strikes. But here's the bridge that might actually take over. The challenge system is epic. So fan interaction will be at an all-time high. You'll get a bad call. You'll want Judge to challenge it. He'll tap his head. They'll look at the replay. It takes 1 second, and they'll go, "Ha ha, you were wrong, ump." It's gonna be sick. And then sometimes the fans will have to shut up, because there are plenty of moments where I'm at a ballpark and fans are freaking out about a pitch that was on the outside corner for a strike. So it's going to be insane. It is, again, going to be a revolutionary rule change. I wish it was already here. I think they've got the technology to do it this year, but they're only testing it in spring training, and then they'll implement it, in my mind and from what I've heard behind the scenes, in 2026. You'll get 3 challenges. You keep them if you win.
It'd be great. I mean, it's amazing to see. I mean, even just how now challenges are being used, or not challenges, but the the replays are being used for officials with the NFL right now, where it's like, oh, that was a first down. It's not a first down. Move, or just like, or that was a catch, not a catch. It's like quickly happening, even without a challenge, just by using the technology, moving things forward. The NBA, I think they got to speed things up a little bit. It's taking way too long. I mean, they have 3 guys standing around having a conversation. I'm sure you could have some fun around with that. I mean, the 3 refs, they're all looking at the camera. One guy's got the headphones on. They're all
Way
talking
too slow.
too slow,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But
It's
like what you said, 1 second. Oh my
mhm.
God, it'd be
Well,
amazing.
because it's a computer telling you what the answer is. The problem with replay sometimes, obviously, it's discretion. I don't know a ton about how the NBA system works, but I have been to plenty of games where you're waiting for way too long. If it's so close, you go with the original call. That's it, right? Like,
Right.
if it's so ticky tack and you can't determine what the real answer is, and you have to look over and over again, just go back to what the original call was. That's what MLB does. They've sped up the system significantly. When instant replay first came out, I was at the league back then, on MLB Network and other platforms with them. And I remember it took way too long, and they sped it up even from year
Yep.
1 to year 2. And I think by year 1 to year 3, they had chopped it down to, I don't know, an average of maybe 30, 40 seconds at most. And that's like with the ump walking over, and getting the call from home base in New York City. So they've got it down pretty quickly, because if you have to take too long, just go with what was there.
Yeah, it really is. It's amazing what's going on. I mean, look, you've had a front row seat to really see how technology, data, and analytics have really moved the sport along, but also the media side of things, and how you now run your network, and all the different shows you're able to now produce. I mean, what do you like you think about how fast things have moving, and as I talked to you, mentioned earlier, so at 76, we're interested in this whole world with Diamond Kinetics and our bats with Marucci and MLB, and we love this stuff. Like, are there other things that you're thinking about, whether it's from a media perspective or not, that you're excited to sort of bring to the game?
Oh, yeah. So I look at voids, and I look at what I think is an easy fix in our sport, and I try to get involved as best as possible. Obviously, not with the rules. That's not my job at all. I don't work at the league office. But I'll give you a real life example. We've got January 25th, the main MLB awards that are held in New York City every year. It's actually the 100th edition of those awards. And we are taking over the rights and the production for the first time. It's run by the Baseball Writers Association, and this is where Shohei Ohtani gets his MVP award and delivers a speech. This is where Paul Skeens gets his Rookie of the Year award, and it's presented by usually a cool special guest and delivers his speech. That awards property should be a much bigger deal than what it is, and we're excited to be involved in taking that to the next level, including for the first time it will be streamed live on digital platforms like YouTube. It will also air in Japan, of course, for an audience that is starving for any type of content that Shohei Ohtani will offer them. So we have, a deal with, I don't know if we can say it, but you'll see it pretty soon anyway, one of the TV networks out there that will run it. And we're behind the scenes putting all of that together. We'll have really pre and post awards coverage with our Foul Territory hosts like me, A.J. Pierzynski, Ken Rosendahl, who's a big part of our team, right? We'll be there and we'll do interviews with the superstars that won the awards. We'll run the show itself, and everyone will be able to watch it and catch it for free and see what they've been missing, because I don't think it's been promoted well enough in the past, and it's never run live. So I think it's a super valuable property. I think people are into that nowadays. They want to hear it's, mini roast kind of conversations that are going on at these awards events. There's often really funny speeches from people. And I feel like most of friends, even that are baseball fans that I've talked to about it, weren't even aware of the distribution of something like that. It's been on TV in the past. So I think that's a good example of bringing MLB to the next, phase of content coverage. Let's look at the NFL. People watch and know about their awards. So hopefully we can play a part in making our sport just as cool and sexy as the NFL with what they do with their awards. Other than that, one other idea is just expanding what we're doing with our shows. Foul Territory is running 5 days a week live. I think in baseball, volume is what wins and what keeps them up to speed on a revenue perspective with a league like the NBA. I don't know what the current tally is, but I think they're pretty close usually when you look at overall revenue for both of those leagues. Part of that has to do with MLB having double the games. So in our world, I'm like, cool, we might not be able to blow up with virality, in the versus, a show that LeBron does, but we might have 5 shows a week and he has 1. So we can kill everyone with volume, and volume in a good way, right? Because the sport has games every day. We need to cover it every day. So we'll do the same thing with our team shows. We'll keep, expanding coverage there.
That's really interesting to hear that. And I also love on Foul Territory, you guys, I like your merch. I think that's, you got the shirt on? Oh, look at that.
I got the shirt. Oh, you know what?
It's following your face.
The smart camera won't let me get the shirt in there. So we'll see if I could. There we go.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's nice.
But yeah, got some merch involved. It's casual. I've always been a t-shirt guy. Of course, I wore suits almost every day in my past job. I could not wait to shed that and be myself, talk like how I talk, wear what I usually wear on an everyday basis. And that's what people want. One of our new hosts actually asked us that in a meeting last night. He was like, it's for a show that's coming out, another team show. And he said, what should I wear? I said, what do you wear every day? And he told me, and I said, that's it. You wear that. I said, what do you wear to the ballpark? And he told me, I said, you don't have to wear that. You could be a little more dressed down. People want to say, oh, I saw you at the airport or at a restaurant and you're wearing the same thing on your show on YouTube.
So when you look at today's players as compared to, you've been covering the sport now 20 plus years, right? Following it for even longer. And you look at today's players, what stands out the most? Their talent, their personality, how they're so good digitally and or financially. Like, what's the thing that's interesting about today's players versus the past?
MLB players are definitely more athletic now. There are more sick athletes out there. Part of that probably has to do with the way that defense is valued. There's more metrics and analytics tied to it, so they can actually say, hey, this player's defensive value is worth this. The number always used in baseball these days is WAR, wins above replacement. But there are a lot of stats that go into that number, and there are even multiple platforms that put that number together. So that part stands out. I'll give you what stands out on a casual basis with the players compared to ones that I covered when I was first getting involved in the industry. They don't go out. After games, You might get a little restaurant action to get a nice meal. We'll often see guys in that scenario for a couple hours, but it's much more tapered down kind of crowd after games these days. With your MLB clubhouse, the conversations are more about where, they're going to maybe meet up in a hotel room to play some type of game together. Like some of them will play like a Mario Kart in a hotel room, all of them together. Or the most popular destination post game, especially on the road for players, is they bring their consoles on the road and they play video games. So it's a very different social experience these days. I would say parts of that are good, parts of that are bad. It can make you a little bit more boring as a conversation because you don't have as much action going on in your life besides just baseball. But the guys certainly aren't hungover when they're having conversations with us, which definitely is different from many players when I was growing up and even first getting into the game. So I think that part stands out. Not a lot of very big drinkers and partiers, especially during the season. And I think there's sometimes a misconception there. I don't know how the other sports are, but as far as conversations with players, I think a lot of them have a lot of interesting things to say, and you just have to meet them in the right place to be able to get the best answers out of them. I think the easiest way to do that is just have as many player-to-player conversations as possible. I am a host on Foul Territory. I'm really the only non-player host involved on a frequent basis, besides someone like Ken Rosenthal is obviously coming on to report news. I want to disappear often on the show, and I'll tell our host that, like, let me bring in the guest, and if they have a charity or something we'd like to promote, I can certainly help with that. I can help with getting our brand sponsorship, kind of sponsored segments and other reads and call to action in there. But otherwise, I'm like, if we have 20 minutes with Tyler Glasnow today, I would like, A.J. Pierzynski, Trevor May, who's kind of newer with our team, former pitcher though, pitcher to pitcher combo. I would like those guys to take over and ask every single question if possible. Here's where I'll come back in. Fan questions, because I'm big with, what's being told to us live on YouTube from our audience. I'll jump in with some of those so that we can, please our fans and make sure they get access to these players. But aside from that, I want to hear what those guys are talking about, just like I would at a dinner table. This is the example I use, Wayne. So if I go to dinner, do I want to hear from a bunch of like super fans or sitting down with, Aaron Judge, or do I want to hear a dinner conversation with Judge and Bryce Harper and A.J. Pierzynski and Todd Frazier, right? I want to hear what those players are talking about at the table, just like you would want to be inside a clubhouse. That's the experience that we try to create. And with the format that we have, you can basically go in any direction. We don't have many rules. I would say it's edgy content, but we're not asking the guys like who they're dating. I don't give a crap about that. But there's not much else that is, inappropriate to talk about. And I think that's what makes it really cool.
Well, it's really been great to have you on our 76 Capital Sports Leadership Show. I mean, Scott, you've had an incredible career to date. So excited about what you're doing with Make Plays Media and Foul Territory. I mean, it's great. I mean, I just love this idea of the fact that you and the show's been, I've been a listener over the years, and just like hearing how, as you said, like how the guys are talking to each other is such an interesting part of this. So maybe leave us with something, interesting that, you think we should all keep an eye on for this 2025 season coming up. And like, is there a player, a team, or someone that we should really keep our eye on that could be really special this year?
Well, we have an emerging, or if you want to already call it, villain that's in our sport that's a little bit newer than what many of us were used to for a long period of time. The evil empire is no longer the New York Yankees. They haven't won in a minute. They can't be the evil empire anymore. They're good. They're consistently good. But the Los Angeles Dodgers are spending the most in these off seasons. They're acquiring international players. They just came off a World Series victory. They've been super successful since that new ownership group took over about probably 12 years ago at this point. So I think it's cool. I mean, some MLB fans, or many MLB fans, will complain about it, but I very quickly remind them how the NBA has had a few super teams that have dominated for decades, and even really going back to its history, the NFL has a few quarterbacks that dominate. We don't have that. We haven't had back-to-back champs since the Yankees dynasty, which was 25 years ago. So I think that part's cool, to have a villain. And I don't think the Dodgers are going to win 4 titles in a row. That's the beauty of baseball. If I asked you right now, hey, life savings on the line, you taking Dodgers to the field, just based on how baseball's history is, you got to take the field. And that's what makes it cool, because there are many fans that are going to enter this season saying, we don't even need to play it. The Dodgers are going to win. And I remember hearing that in NFL and NBA very often, but the likelihood of that actually happening in baseball is very low. So I think that's what makes the daily storylines really cool, because you can actually believe in the fact that you're following a sport where you have no idea who's going to end up as a champ out of the 10 to 12 contenders that we end up seeing for the year.
Love it. Love it. Well, Scott, again, thanks so much for joining us on our show, and best of luck with everything that you're doing.
Thanks, Wayne. Appreciate it. Enjoyed the combo.
On behalf of the entire 76 Capital team, thank you for joining us for this edition of our Sports Leadership Show. Please remember to subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast network or on the 76 Capital website. You can also explore the hundreds of episodes we've produced over the past several years on those same networks. And as always, go out there and make it happen.